the city lights. There is a world few know about, where rules don't apply, no. And you can't keep a good girl down. Looking for a good time, gonna make that shake that money on a dime.
Before we dive into this extraordinary and glamorous world of seduction, women, glitter, and skin, we would like to acknowledge one woman in particular who paved the way for women in this realm. Gypsy Rose Lee, born Louise Havett, began her claim to fame early on. She was born in West Seattle, Washington in 1911. At the age of 1, she won a healthy baby contest. This small experience started her career, and she continued her career to become a very successful striptease entertainer. She unfortunately was not very talented, unlike her sister June, who was dancing on ballet point at the age of 2. Her mother Rose was determined to make Louise a performer, as her sister June was now performing all over Seattle, but Louise just had no interest. Years later, Louise began performing. Her mother Rose created a vaudeville show that she and her sister June starred in. Her mother Rose then put her on stage to perform her first striptease act at the young age of 15. When she only took off a few pieces of clothing, the tease was more exciting than the traditional stripping, and thus she found her calling. The burlesque act eventually was a flop, but the Broadway production Gypsy was a hit. Unfortunately, vaudeville was dying, and she and her mother lost June when she went and got married at the age of 13. Her mother decided to create a new act all around Louise. She bleached all of the girls' hair and let them wear high heels. The act was changed to Rose Louise and her Hollywood Blondes, with Louise being the only brunette. In 1931, Louise left the group and went to New York and began her own career. As her popularity was growing, so was her career. Men and women attended her shows, and her acts were more comical than about sex. She included witty monologues, accents, and singing while she stripped. She moved on to appear in movies. Her first debut was in 1943 in Alibaba Goes to Town. She began working with artists such as Stephen Sondheim and Ethel Merman. Over her life, she married 3 times. On her last marriage, she had a son and was very happy. She unfortunately died in 1970 of cancer, but her legacy of Gypsy lives on till today.
Have you the faintest idea about the private life of an exotic dancer? Well, up until a few years ago, it was New York's second largest industry. Now, a fan dancer's education requires years of concentration, and for the sake of explanation, take a look at me. I began at the age of 3, learning ballet at the Royal Imperial School in Moscow. Oh, I suffered and suffered for my art. Then, of course, Sweet Briar. Oh, dear college days. And after 4 years of psychology, zoology, biology, and anthropology, my education was complete. And I was ready to make my professional debut for the Minskys on 14th Street. Now, the things that go on in a fan dancer's mind would give you no end of surprise. But if you're psychologically inclined, there's more to see than meets the eyes. For an example, when I lower my gown a fraction and expose a patch of shoulder, I'm not interested in your reaction or in the bareness of my shoulder. I'm thinking of some painting by Van Gogh or by Cézanne, or the charm I found in reading Lady Windermere's Fan. When I lower the other side, expose my other shoulder, do you think I take the slightest pride in the whiteness of that shoulder? I'm thinking of my country house, or the jolly fun in shooting grouse. There's the music, and that's my cue. There's only one thing left to do. So I do it. use my skirts with slyness and dexterity. I'm mentally computing just how much I'll give to charity. And though my stockings I have revealed, and just a bit of me remains concealed. I'm thinking of the life of Dooza. Or the third chapter of all this in heaven, too. And none of those men whose minds are obscene. Ooh. They leave me apathetic. I prefer the more aesthetic. Things like dramas by Racine.
As we move into the media's portrayal of burlesque dancers and strippers, we first want to explore their clothing that makes these performers so popular. At first thought, wearing nothing comes to mind. However, the costumes and attire that the dancers wear are relevant to their performance. Burlesque dancing is satirical and is usually speaking about political or important topics. Group performances for burlesque dancers usually wear performance costumes instead of a certain costume that corresponds with the theme of the act. These costumes include feathers, beads or pearls, costume jewelry, and bright colors, and of course, high heels. Many times, the burlesque dancers wear garters and stockings or fishnets. Lace is also very popular. Strippers, however, usually start with limited clothing on and are eventually nude. In the media, majority of the women are portrayed as completely nude, and this is not the case in real life. In real life, the dancer is allowed to take off as much as she or he are comfortable doing, unless there is a club regulation. Props used in burlesque dancing would normally depend on the act. They do not usually dance on poles as strippers do, but they can include them. The stage for burlesque dancing is an extraordinary sight in itself. The more dances there are, the more amazing the stage becomes. The stage enhances the performance. In strip clubs, the stage is usually surrounded by mirrors, which is interesting for the audience, but more personal for the dancer. The focus is all on them rather than the performance as a whole. When you watch a music video, you usually see at least one scene in a club, particularly a strip club. A lot of smoke and money is used for effects, and loud music to enhance the video. The women, regardless if they are stripping in the video or not, are usually wearing little to no clothes, while the men are fully dressed. Men are usually groping the women and getting lap dances. Women are often sexualized and objectified during the music videos. This stems from the lyrics that we hear in the music that women are seen as objects and are essentially disposable. Women are shown kissing one another and dancing sexually together. While these actions are all fine for the music video, in real life strip clubs there are many boundaries and the dancers are not usually mingling with the crowd. Lap dances are restricted to a specific area in the club, and men are not allowed to touch the dancers, not even while receiving a dance. In movies, the portrayals are sometimes more negative for strippers than usual. Although burlesque dancing is more acceptable, quote-unquote, in the eyes of society, the women are still often portrayed as being unconfident in the beginning, but somehow are recognized and are given a chance. In burlesque, with Christina Aguilera, for example, she was the black sheep that could sing, but no one knew.
Oh,
Hold it.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Raise a curtain.
I need a tough love, yeah. I need a tough love, I need a tough love, yeah. A tough love, yeah. When he kisses me, I get that thrill. When he don't wiggle, I'm walking still.
Elizabeth Berkley in Showgirls is another example of a burlesque dancer with this persona. She had the dream of becoming a top showgirl, and with only her suitcase went off to hopefully start a career to be successful.
No, wait. 2 beats. 1, 2, go.
One of the most sexualized and known cartoons is also from this realm, Jessica Rabbit. Her unrealistic proportion, as she quotes, "I'm not bad, I was just drawn that way," are drawn to make men melt.
Plenty money, 1922. You let other women make a fool of you. Why don't you do right like some other men do? Get out of here.
She's married to Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, what a lucky girl. Now if you had prepared 20 years ago, you wouldn't be wandering now from door to door. Why don't you do right?
Strippers are sometimes depicted negatively in that their status as a performer is taken away. Some of the women in movies are portrayed as having pimps or working for money. Stripping is usually forced upon them as a way of compensation instead of being in a job with pride. And when the women are dancing, they are usually very uncomfortable. In the movie The Players Club, this is a prime example. Women-on-women violence happens all the time when depicted in negative ways.
Come on, bitch, come out! It's bitches like you to make it hard for women like me! That's what's happening!
The double standard still exists for men and women even in this area. When Magic Mike and Magic Mike XXL were released, in the first 5-day weekend, Magic Mike XXL made $26.7 million. Magic Mike made $39 million opening weekend. Although in society, being a male stripper is looked down upon, unless being hired, the criticisms for them is still not nearly as bad as the backlash that women get. Women are considered degrading if they choose to pursue stripping, and it is almost a secret occupation for most women. All in all, stripping and burlesque dancing are occupations. They are performers and people that put a lot of time and effort into their work, even if it involves limited clothing. They should be respected as a performer no matter what gender. And if you ever get the chance to watch them live, know it will be unforgettable.
First time when I'm gone, she give me down from distance, and she love to climb on top. She love to walk off limb.